Hey there everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel if you are returning, or welcome to my YouTube channel if you're new. So today's video is really exciting. It's going to be all of my best last minute tricks and tips for the SAT writing and language section. Basically the same thing as the grammar section, they just give it a fancy name. So today we're going to be talking about 4 different tips to help you last minute stuff if you are taking the SAT very shortly. There is one coming up this Saturday, actually June 4th. I would also like to mention that tomorrow evening is actually our SAT crash course. So if you are taking the June SAT on Saturday, definitely make sure to register, check that out. Link will be in the description, as well as the link for our SAT math workbook. So without further ado, let's head into today's video. All right, so for our first tip, it's going to be that we need to know that they put fake words on the SAT. So it's kind of crazy, but it is true that the makers of the SAT, the College Board, they will actually put words that don't exist in the English language on the test. So you definitely want to be familiar with what those words look like. So let's look at 2 problems that incorporate a fake word. Alrighty, so when we begin here looking at question number 12, I can see that there are, in the answer choices, 3 different versions of it. There's the IT''S version, there's the ITS apostrophe, and then there's ITS with no apostrophe. So the fake version of it is ITS apostrophe. Whenever we see that as an answer choice, we are automatically going to eliminate it because that's not actually a word in English. So automatically we're going to knock out choice B here. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this problem while we're at it. So what we need to know for IT''S, this is what we call a contraction. And a contraction is basically 2 words taken and smushed together into one. So IT''S actually breaks down into it is. So whenever you see IT''S and you're plugging back in the answer choices to see which one would be correct, you want to plug it in as it is, not it's. So you'll very easily be able to see if it sounds correct. So can we say since the initial stages of it is construction? Definitely not. So it can't be A and it can't be C because that's also IT''S. So it has to be choice D. So the ITS without any sort of apostrophe, this is used to show possession, which means the same thing basically as ownership. So we're talking about the fact that the construction belongs to it being the Tower of Pisa in Italy. So that's the possessive form of it, which makes sense here because the construction is that of this tower. All right, and then checking out question number 23 here, again, same philosophy applies. We want to knock out the choice ITS apostrophe because this is a fake word. So automatically when I see choice C, I'm going to go ahead and knock that out. Then I'm going to check out choice A, which is the IT''S, which we said is it is. At it is best, not going to work. So then we're between B and D here. So both B and D are used for possession or ownership. The only difference between these 2 is just which one refers to a singular one thing and which one refers to a plural, basically multiple things. So ITS is going to refer to a singular thing, and then THEIR refers to something that's plural. So for example, if you were talking about a cup, you can say its handle is blue. If you were talking about multiple cups, you would say their handles are blue. So because we're talking in the sentence here about the system is referring to something that is singular, so we're going to want to go ahead and pick choice B. Alrighty, so that was tip 1. Remember the fake word ITS apostrophe, knock it out immediately, and also we can plug in IT''S as it is as a little trick. Alright, tip number 2 is going to be to always try out the option that says delete the underlined portion first if that is presented as an answer choice. So let's go ahead and try that for question 20. So we're going to try to delete the underlined portion. So basically we're going to try to read the sentence without that underlined portion. And here's the thing. If it makes grammatical sense, meaning the sentence still has a grammatical structure that's appropriate, intact upon removing it, and it still makes logical sense, that means you want to go ahead and pick delete, because deleting it doesn't change anything about the grammatical structure of the sentence. So let's try. Berland began a years-long process of drilling out small amounts of soil from under the tower and then monitoring the tower's resulting movement. So there's nothing wrong with the sentence upon deleting it, so we want to go ahead and delete. So delete many times when it's presented as an answer will indeed be the correct answer. Again, many times, not always, because here's the thing. Deleting the underlined portion will allow us to do one of two things in many cases. So the first thing it may do is it will allow us to avoid being repetitive, so no repetition. And the second thing it could let us do is to be short and sweet, which I abbreviate as SAS, S-A-S. All right, so we could see though in the sentence, it said a years-long process. So there's no need to say several years again. So you can safely trust though that if you could read the sentence back and it still makes sense, that you should go with delete, because there's probably some hidden repetition or wordiness in the other choices. Let's try that again for question 1. We're going to try out choice D, delete first. So let's read it. Let's just say NASA. NASA is a U.S. government agency whose budget is frequently contested. Makes complete sense, so it's got to be D. Again, we already see frequently, so A, B, and C would therefore be repetitive. Alrighty, and lastly, for number 38, let's try reading around that. Specially designed drop towers reduce these problems, but provide no more than 10 seconds of microgravity. Again, makes sense, and it already said specially designed in the sentence, so we don't need to say that yet again. Alright, so delete is our friend. Is she always our friend? No, but is she oftentimes our friend? Yes, absolutely. All right, tip number 3 is actually one of my favorites because I think it's incredibly applicable to many, many different topics. So this strategy is going to involve picking the answer choice that's the odd one out for whatever reason. So I'm going to walk us through a few examples here so you guys can see basically how there's an odd one out answer relative to the other 3 choices and why that would then be correct. Okay, so if we check out question 43, this is basically a transition word question. Let me just write that down. So a transition word question. And we can see when we scan through the choices that choice A says then, B, C, and D say however, nevertheless, and yet. So all of these words here, B, C, and D, are used as contrast transition words. Basically when we're trying to say something oppositional that goes against what we're saying. So because B, C, and D are all transition words that are used for the same purpose, the odd one out here, the only transition word that has a different meaning then would have to be choice A, which is therefore going to be our correct answer. All right, for number 15 here, I want us to notice that choice A, which is it, choice B, which is that, and choice C, which is one, all 3 of these choices are pronouns, meaning they're words that replace or swap out for a noun. Like if you say it, that, or one, that would probably refer back to something that you've already said. We can see on the other hand that choice D, the policy, is a noun. So that's going to be the odd one out here because it's a part of speech. It's more specific. It's different from the other 3, which therefore makes D then the correct answer. All right, and 44, again, we can get this right without even really reading the question or understanding what's going on because, again, the odd one out, there's only going to be one that's different. So if 3 of them are the same, that can't be the right answer. So not unlike, so that's double negative. So not unlike means the same. Unlike means different. Not like means different. And of course, different from means different. So B, C, and D are all possessing the same meaning. They're saying different. A is saying the same. So that obviously then has to be the answer because that's the only one conveying unique content. Alrighty, and lastly, we're going to fill in this box here. So we need to know what pieces of punctuation are equivalent to each other so we can go ahead and knock out equivalent answer choices easily, quickly, and efficiently. So let's talk about the most common equivalent pieces of punctuation. So what we need to know for the SAT is that a period does the same thing as a semicolon, which does the same thing as a comma paired with fanboys. So I'll explain what fanboys is in a second, but what we want to know about each of these three pieces of punctuation is they're all used for the same purpose, which is to separate two full sentences. So if you have two grammatically full sentences, you can go ahead and separate them with any of these three pieces of punctuation. So a period, we obviously know, is going to be a dot. A semicolon is like a dot and then a comma. And then a comma paired with fanboys. Let's talk about what fanboys stands for. So it's an acronym that stands for the following. I would definitely write this down if you don't know it. It stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So basically, if we ever see a comma paired with one of those words, that does the same thing as a period or a semicolon. So when we look at choices, if we can see that two choices have identical wording and any of these three equivalent pieces of punctuation, we should automatically be able to remove them because those two answer choices are identical. And obviously, and I guess unfortunately, there cannot be two correct answers on this test. So when we check out question 14, I can see that the phrasing of choice A, no change, and D is exactly the same. It's declined as, and I can also see that there's equivalent pieces of punctuation because this one has a semicolon, and then choice D here has a period. So automatically, I would go ahead and knock out choices A and D. Alrighty, so that is good here. And let's then check out question 12. So for question 12, I can see that in choices A and D, that's completely ironic. It's not always A and D that they do this. This one has the word ridership, and so does choice D. So these have identical wording. It's just ridership. And then we can see that the comma but and the semicolon do exactly the same thing here. So A and D would therefore be removed because those are equivalent and therefore cannot both be correct. Alrighty, so those are my best last minute tips for the SAT English. So best of luck if you are taking the SAT soon.